BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Tuesday. It is time for some true crime talk radio, and from the title, you may notice that we will be talking a lot about the Zodiac Killer in this episode. Yesterday, though, was Zodiac Mondays, and I was heavily debating on whether or not I should do that as a Zodiac Killer news report, because the week before last, I did an episode called A Zodiac Killer News Report, where I was talking about many different subjects related to the Zodiac Killer mystery, and I thought it would really give me the opportunity to keep things going in an ongoing way. Like, say, for example, sometimes I do the Zodiac Killer Q&A sessions, where I can respond to your questions and comments, but referring to it as a news report would allow me to not only do that, answer your questions about the Zodiac Killer, or at least attempt to, but also to talk about anything that I've been reviewing in the media or anything that I've been learning about in regards to the Zodiac Killer case. So I think that might be happening a couple times on Zodiac Mondays. Of course, if there is some breaking news, or if there's going to be a particular suspect that I would like to devote the entire episode to, or maybe someone has written a book that I have been reading, yeah, okay, we could just do the Zodiac Mondays without the words news report in the title, but the advantages of doing Zodiac Mondays as a news report segment would be talking about more than one thing, and I really found that the episodes on this channel, where I can talk about many different subjects at once, have had at least a better experience for me, and I think that they've turned out to have been some of the better episodes, and I cannot do it without you guys, because as I said many times, I read your questions and comments, and I incorporate them into the episodes. So if there's anything that you're curious at all about the Zodiac Killer mystery or any of the other true crime cases mentioned on this channel, you can put your ideas in the comments section down below, and as always, like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And on that note, I am also the host of the Zodiac Killer channel's Interview with the Experts series, and I recently had the opportunity to interview Richard Grinnell of ZodiacCyphers.com, and it was a very good discussion that we had, talking all about not only the crimes of the Zodiac Killer, but Richard has a lot of observations about the Zodiac letters and ciphers, and there are going to be a lot of things that I think you guys would really like to hear about in that interview, so please look out for that on the Zodiac Killer channel. And if you're listening to that in the future, there's going to be an episode with Richard Grinnell on the Zodiac Killer channel. You can like and subscribe to that one. And as always, a great way to help out all of these programs is to go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, which was written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the Teespring page. Feel free to have a look at some of the merchandise, and remember, being weird is not a crime. And the final announcement before we truly begin is that I have been going through the Atlanta Monster podcast, which is available here on YouTube, and you can listen like any other YouTube video. However, it is definitely done in the pure podcast format, and they have released a 15-part podcast on the Zodiac Killer, and they even have some additional bonus episodes. It's a professionally done podcast, and it is talking about, again, many different perspectives on the subjects. Michael Butterfield and Tom Voigt are referenced a lot in that one. The Atlanta Monster podcast here on YouTube. And if you listen to the early episodes, it is very general, but then it gets into some bigger discussions on the suspects, and it is professionally done. I believe iHeartRadio was involved with either the creation or the distribution of this podcast, and they do their subjects in seasons. One season was devoted to the Zodiac Killer, and one season was devoted to something more Atlanta-related, the Atlanta child murders and the serial killer Wayne Williams. and one is dedicated to something that I'll be talking about tomorrow, and that is the DC Sniper, the saga of the Beltway Snipers. And I will be responding to that tomorrow instead of the AMA. I'm going to be doing an episode that is not only going to look at their content that has been shared in a 15-part podcast series on the DC Snipers, but also incorporating some other material. And if you want to follow along with all of these discussions, once again, you can subscribe to this channel as well as some other places on YouTube, like the Zodiac Killer channel or AstroPsych 400. But I do have to confess to you guys that another reason to do the Zodiac Killer news report is sometimes I am reading about more than one thing or learning about more than one thing. There are things that I want to share with you guys about the Zodiac Killer mystery, and it is just a little bit, though. It's stuff that isn't big enough for a full episode. And sometimes I think, okay, well, say, hypothetically, maybe I could do an episode about Arthur Lee Allen, but then also throw in something at the very end about the Zodiac Killer suspect, Gary Post. But then I was like, do those two topics really go together? That would be completely off topic. And sometimes I've done the AMA, where I'm responding to questions and comments about a Zodiac suspect, and then I just do a general Zodiac discussion, which is kind of what I did yesterday on the episode about the Zodiac Killer versus Jack the Ripper Extended Edition. So if you're just presenting it as a general discussion, free-for-all, but still all mostly Zodiac related, I think that would also be very beneficial, because for a while I've meant to talk to you guys about the Zodiac suspect Kenneth Lester German. I have mentioned him in at least 2 different episodes on this channel. I have one of the older black box recordings about Kenneth Lester German, and I learned about him in a completely roundabout way. I was reading the book The Most Dangerous Animal of All by Gary Stewart, and Gary was talking about his biological father, Earl Van Best, whom he thought was the Zodiac Killer, and he shared something about how Earl Van Best was fluent in English, German, and Japanese. He was practically raised trilingual, learning German and Japanese from his father. Again, so says Gary Stewart, but I can kind of believe him, because Earl Van Best developed a very close relationship with a man named William Lomas, who was a German-American, more or less, and then Earl Van Best's third wife was Edith Coase, who was an Austrian woman, and according to Gary Stewart and the research that he has done on his biological father, the big bonding point for him and these people was the German language. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to humor you, Gary Stewart. I'm going to look for German language clues in the Zodiac Killer mystery, and I began trying to see if anybody else had written about German language clues and maybe the letters, or how some of the misspellings might have some type of Germanic influence outside of the English language, like from, say, German. And when I put that into Google, mostly I got these 2 articles that were coming right to the top about a guy named Philip Powers, who was accusing his grandfather, Kenneth Lester German, of being the Zodiac Killer. So it's not German language clues, but rather a suspect who had the last name German. And when I did that old-fashioned black box recording, I was really just trying to zone in on 2 pieces of info. The first is that the whole concept of my daddy was the Zodiac has now been carried on to a new generation, and now someone is saying my grandfather was the Zodiac Killer. And I also wanted to point out something that I thought was really weird, because I was trying to get in touch with Philip Powers, and he had this Twitter page where he was posting about Kenneth Lester German as a Zodiac Killer suspect, and he started it in the spring of 2018, but he only kept it active for 6 weeks. I was about to message him in one of the DMs on Twitter, but then I saw that he hadn't updated at all after the first 6 weeks of activity. I mean, just 6 weeks in 2018. So then I really had my doubts that this was, maybe, I was about to say a genuine attempt. No, it's probably a genuine attempt. And I've seen Philip Powers posting around on different parts of the internet promoting his Zodiac Killer suspect, Kenneth Lester German, his grandfather. But the part that I've always been meaning to discuss, but that's been left out of some previous discussions, is his handwriting. Somebody in the comments section just encouraged me to look at Philip Powers' handwriting, and I asked, where did you see that? And he said, just go over to Tom Voigt's website. And even before I got to ZodiacKiller.com, I found that Philip Powers did indeed have some images that he had posted on Twitter from the earlier days that I had the ability to review for a second time. And he has a couple different documents that have what he claims is his grandfather's handwriting. Some of them are cursive pieces of writing, on a check that I don't think are very helpful, because there might be something somewhere about the Zodiac Killer writing in cursive, but almost always the Zodiac Killer wrote in print. Though some people even said, you're not looking for handwriting samples, you need to look for hand printing samples. But the letters that actually are written in print form, I do think bear a certain similarity to the Zodiac Killer. For example, he has a list of names that have been written out, including the names Sue, Kay, Kim, Judy, John, Doris, and that does bear a certain similarity to some of the capital letters that were written by the Zodiac Killer. And he has another one, though, that also features the handwriting of, again, what is supposedly Philip Lester German's notation on a business card. It says James G. Wood, sales representative, is the business card, but then there's some similar Zodiac handwriting with the words policy number dash WH2229-8. And I'm noticing something very odd, though. In the printed text that Philip Powers is trying to claim is his grandfather's handwriting, you don't actually see the name Kenneth Lester German, whereas on the Bank of America check that he posted, okay, very clearly, that's Kenneth Lester German's check. It has his name on it, and it's signed, so I don't think that I have any reason to doubt Philip Powers at all, and mostly I can believe him that this is his grandfather's handwriting, but I'm not going to lie, there's like a 1 to 2% doubt in my mind that did he actually write those, especially with something as simple as a business card. How easy would it have been for somebody else to have written that little notation? So I'm just very skeptical about everything associated with what Philip Powers has shared about his grandfather being the Zodiac Killer. And some points that I have shared in previous episodes is that a reason to suspect Kenneth Lester German of being the Zodiac is that 2 photos were uncovered in his possession, which bear a very similar resemblance to Donna Lass, who disappeared on September 6 of 1970 while working at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino in State Line, Nevada, but still in the Lake Tahoe region. And that has been something that Philip Powers has tried to establish. Could Kenneth Lester German have been the Zodiac and Donna Lass been a genuine Zodiac Killer victim? The problem with that is, though, those are just questions, and I certainly have never seen an ounce of convincing material that the Zodiac Killer actually abducted Donna Lass. She is an unconfirmed victim. We don't even know if Donna Lass was actually murdered. She has never been found. She is simply a person who vanished, and there's been a lot of investigation into this. Mike Morford did a very good interview with Joanne Getchie, who was a close friend of Donna Lass, or a former roommate, and Joanne Getchie even said in the interview that even though they were roommates and they were friends, they didn't actually spend that much time together because they worked opposite shifts at the at a Letterman General Hospital when they were in San Francisco together. Now, was Donna Lass actually attacked by the Zodiac Killer? Anything is possible. I'm just not convinced yet, and I'm not even convinced that the women in the photographs the woman in the photographs was actually Donna Lass. I mean, yeah, there's somewhat of a resemblance, but it's not an absolute matching resemblance, so to speak. But you can say anything you want about Kenneth Lester German as a Zodiac Killer suspect, or Philip Powers' motive. And as I said, I have seen him posting around in different places on the internet, whether it's a forum or the comment section on YouTube. He has an open invitation to contact me if he wants to share anything, and he can do that at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com, as well as all of you guys. If you have something that you think is a little bit more extensive than something for the comment section on YouTube, you can write me at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. My email is posted in the description box, as well as my Facebook, and of course BlackBoxNet88 on Instagram. Many ways to keep in touch. But about a different Zodiac theorist, there is one out there named David Gold, who wrote a book called My Dance with the Zodiac Killer, and it talks about something that is an almost larger-than-life set of beliefs that the Zodiac Killer was actually a team effort done by Frank Morrison, John and Clarence Anglin, the Anglin brothers. These guys were the ones who escaped from Alcatraz in 1962, and then they went on to become the Zodiac Killer, and also Frank Morrison orchestrated the D.B. Cooper hijacking And even before Alcatraz, Frank Morris was the Phantom Killer in Texarkana in 1946, and then he also was involved with some other things like the West Virginia Mothman incident, and in one of David Gold's videos, he referred to that as the Mothman murder, and he's like, wait, not murder. I was like, I'm glad he corrected that, because the Mothman isn't so much a murder mystery as it is a paranormal event. But on David Gold's channel, he did ask the audience about some requests, and I even responded, could you tell the story of Frank Morris and the Mothman incident? And he said that they were involved with the collapsing of a bridge near Point Pleasant, West Virginia, that their activities surrounding the Mothman led to a very famous collapse of a bridge that killed a lot of people in West Virginia. And I only learned about that because when I was, I must have been 13 years old, because I think I was in the 8th grade when we had to do West Virginia history. It was as part of our social studies curriculum, and they told us the story for two reasons. The first is it is a genuine historical event, and the second is because there's another paranormal event that is connected to that. I mean, I don't even think it's commonly believed that the Mothman is connected to the collapsing of that bridge near Point Pleasant, West Virginia, but there's something called the Curse of Cornstalk, where there was this Native American leader named Cornstalk who put a curse on the land for 200 years because of the activities of, the colonial Americans, for lack of a better term, or I'm trying to find a better way of saying white people, but yes, he put a curse on the land for 200 years, and when the bridge collapsed, people said that it was the curse of Cornstalk. Okay, so Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers have been accused of every crime under the sun, as well as the murder of Bob Crane, even. Somebody wrote that out in the comment section when I did my first episode on David Gold. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because I did an episode once that was released not on YouTube, but exclusively on LaunchPad 1, and I just said, okay, there's this guy named David Gold. He has a YouTube channel, and he has a book out called My Dance with the Zodiac Killer. He's just making this stuff up. We don't need to talk about him anymore. And I finally just said it. He's just making these things up. But when I went back and listened to my very first episode that I had done on him, I was saying something quite different in the year 2020. In fact, I was saying something quite to the contrary. My idea at the time, which I had completely forgotten about, was the ideas in David Gold's My Dance with the Zodiac Killer were not fabrications. What I said was, he's talking to someone, and it's almost like he's retelling conversations that he has heard in the past. He is not blatantly fabricating this. And I began to think about that in a recent episode when he referred to Frank Morris as a schizophrenic. And I was beginning to think, now, I don't know exactly who he would be talking to. Does he actually know somebody with schizophrenia who is telling him these stories? And he's saying, yep, that's right. I was Frank Morris, and then I was the Zodiac Killer, and I was the Phantom Killer. Is he actually having like a sit-down conversation with someone who has some type of mental health issue and is relaying this information to him? Information which is not accurate, but the way he shares these stories, it does appear that he is not exactly making it up all on his own. The other possibility that I was thinking about is it could be a type of imaginary conversation, thinking about what would Frank Morris say if he were with me now, the way that you can kind of talk to yourself in your imagination. I don't know. But David Gold can always correct me as well. He can write the show anytime at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. I will talk to most people, especially someone who has a publication out there, such as a book on their suspect, like the way David Gold does, My Dance with the Zodiac Killer. But I had completely forgot about that. I guess over time I just began to think about him in a different way. And the reason why I talk about his material very frequently is because he runs a YouTube channel and he uploads all the time, even more often than I do. Some people are saying that there are a lot of episodes on BBOR. He uploads more frequently than I do, but not all of his episodes are true crime related or Zodiac related. He has some things about music. He has some things about just daily life. However, I will stand by one point where I said that I was talking about somebody with dark comedy once, and we said, okay, maybe it has its big toe on the line of inappropriate behavior. Not completely, but just a little bit inappropriate. Okay, that's talking about comedians who use dark comical material. Well, with David Gold, I think it's a little bit more than just being on the line of inappropriate behavior. It's kind of halfway in the door. I mean, if he were indeed making up these stories about Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, that would be horribly immoral. And if he were talking to somebody who was mentally deranged and just relaying their far-out sayings and ramblings, that would be immoral in multiple ways. And even if it's just trying to talk to some type of imaginary friend named Frank Morris, then that would be immoral as well, because it's all about deception. And, I mean, I don't really know the exact truth that was going on. I just wanted to share that because I had put something out on BlackBoxOnlineRadio, and after watching maybe 30 or 40 or 50 of David Gold's videos, I had come to a very different conclusion than what I even remembered about myself in my own episode. So more or less an updated version on some remarks that I made in the past. But to move on to a different subject, I did an episode yesterday on the channel called The Zodiac Killer vs. Jack the Ripper Extended Edition, and it was a follow-up to one that I had done in 2021 of a very similar title. But one point that I did leave out was there is a book out that is on the subject. It is called Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer, The History of the Most Famous Serial Killers Who Were Never Caught, and this is by Zed Simpson, and I would just like to read the description of that has been posted on Amazon.com. When one hears the term Victorian, many images come to mind. For some the term conjures up visions of lace and gloves and delicate fans. Others think that tight corsets and even tighter morals. Others, swayed by perhaps one too many British costume dramas, envision gentle elegance and long-lasting beauty. Naturally, a few people think of dead bodies cast about the streets, in dark bedrooms, and in other places, most mutilated to a shocking degree, and yet those tragic images played a significant role not only in the late Victorian London, but ever since. In 1888 and 1889, a killer stalked the streets of the city through the notoriously overcrowded, crime-ridden Whitechapel district, murdering young women and then cutting their bodies apart like a butcher. There have been countless numbers of serial killers throughout history, and certainly more prolific ones, but the timing, circumstances, and unsolved nature of the case continue to make Jack the Ripper one of the most famous serial killers in history. The murders came at a time when media coverage could be both acute and widespread, and it allowed the public to take a closer look into how police agencies operated at the time, exposing both their strengths and shortcomings. Of course, the lack of modern forensics hamstrung the investigators in the late 19th century, and while the police file for the case was extensive and active for several years, much of the evidence disappeared from the file without explanation, possibly as souvenirs. Despite the fact that the police interviewed thousands and considered hundreds of suspects, they were never able to arrest anyone for the murders. The intense media coverage also likely played a role in both the actual murderer and would-be copycats and pranksters, sending hundreds of letters to the police claiming to be Jack the Ripper. It's also indisputable that the use of the precise modus operandi, the serial killer given a nickname, and the taunting letters sent to the police all influenced subsequent serial killers and the way they were covered, whether it's the Zodiac Killer, the Son of Sam, or the Boston Strangler. The antecedent of all 20th century and 21st century remains Jack the Ripper. Toward the end of the year 1968, a new and more sinister headline began to pop up. At first it was just in California, and seemed to be a simply random crime, with a couple being murdered a few days before Christmas. It was a tragic tale, but in California it was often dismissed as a byproduct of the youth culture of sex, drugs, and rock and roll that often led people to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Then some months later another couple was shot, and this time the man survived. The story he told was not of someone targeting either him or his friend, but a type of madman shooting at them again and again. The idea that there was an unhinged serial killer on the loose, writing letters to the police and the newspapers, not only claiming responsibility for these killings but for others that either had been or would be committed. After he stabbed a third couple and then shot a cab driver in cold blood, he began to send more and more letters. These, like the earlier ones, were signed with a symbol understood only by the killer, a man who called himself Zodiac. In addition to sending cryptic letters that authorities had to decipher, the Zodiac killer used them to both taunt the people and threaten more violence, that a failure to publish what he would write would lead him to cruise around all weekend alone, killing people in the night and then move on to kill again until he ended up with a dozen people over the weekend. This book examines the cases, crimes, and investigations and attempts to identify all the potential suspects for the two notorious serial killers. And once again, I was reading the description of the book Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer by Zed Simpson, and you can get this on Amazon.com. However, I must say that the reviews of this book, written by people who have read it on their own, were not very positive. And I wanted to read this article, actually, I wanted to read this description because, well, it's just that. It's like an article in itself. As far as people taking the pieces of the Jack the Ripper case file as souvenirs, I think an example of that was the Dear Boss letter that was somehow just taken from the police archives. It was stolen, more or less, and then it mysteriously had been returned to the police in 1988 for the 100-year anniversary. The Dear Boss letter was returned to the authorities, but after 100 years it was impossible to obtain any type of actual DNA from the person who had written it, although there was the confession from Frederick Best, the journalist in the 1930s, who said that he had fabricated the Dear Boss letter and the Saucy Jack postcard as a way to generate some publicity for newspapers or creating media hype and frenzy so people would buy publications of a particular newspaper called The Star. However, not all ripperologists believe his confession. So I think, though, that there are some even points where we can challenge in this description. One line here says that Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer had something similar. Like, it's also indisputable that the use of a precise modus operandi, the serial killer being given a nickname in the taunting letters sent to the police. I think that's odd because Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer both gave themselves their own nicknames. I mean, the Zodiac said very clearly, "This is the Zodiac speaking," and Jack the Ripper referred to himself as Jack in more than one publication, and I even talked about the Saucy Jackie postcard. But no, the Zodiac was very precise. He wanted to be called the Zodiac, whereas I find that with other serial killers, they get a name that is relevant more to their activities. I was just talking about the serial killer Kenneth McDuff on the channel, who was referred to as the Broomstick Killer because he had murdered somebody with a broomstick. Or I had also talked about the Eyeball Killer in the Versus series because he cut out the victim's eyeballs. Well, I mean, that's why they're calling him that. The Roadside Strangler, whose real name was Michael Ross. I think you can guess why they called him the Roadside Strangler. And sometimes it's based on territory, whether you have the Green River Killer or like Herb Baumeister, the I-70 Strangler. It's because of something that is relevant to their activities, whereas the Zodiac Killer was previously known as the Cipher Slayer because he sends out ciphers and he commits murders. But I mean, it's not even that I think this. It's almost certainly the Zodiac Killer did not want a simple, ordinary nickname. He wanted to be known as the Zodiac, and originally I had thought that the reason why the Zodiac Killer called himself that was he thought that it was badass. Whoever was behind this, whether you think it's one person, two people, a hoax, a big group, no matter what you think, I was like, the reason why the name Zodiac was chosen was the person thought it was cool. That was my own original first impression of the case, that when I truly put some thought into it. But then I began to wonder, why was the name Zodiac chosen? And It's quite possible that Drew Beeson, the host of the Zodcast, made the kind of common sense observation that there's a brand of Zodiac watches out there. I mean, that's just what it is. There's a brand of watches called Zodiac that has the same symbol with a circle and a cross going through it. The name came from the watch. Perhaps, and perhaps the Zodiac's father was a watchmaker named Ned. I mean, who knows, but maybe that's one possibility. Or he could actually relate to astronomy, and Michael Cole, author of the Zodiac Revisited trilogy, has a lot of observations about that, about their similarities with the zodiac symbol and the nautical compass rose, and everybody thinks about astrology with the Zodiac killer, and he's like, no, it is astronomy that we need to focus on. And it's possible that the Zodiac killer was ex-Navy or ex-Air Force, and maybe had celestial navigation knowledge. Those are the observations of Michael Cole. And with Drew Beeson and Michael Cole, I've interviewed them both on the Zodiac Killer channels. Interviews with the Expert series, a lot of things over there. And one more time to talk about the material in this episode, you can look for the books My Dance with the Zodiac Killer by David Gold, Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer by Zed Simpson. You can follow Philip Powers on Twitter. He might not update a lot, but he has shared some things about his Zodiac suspect, Kenneth Lester German. Okay, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Black Box Online Radio, and you can get in touch with me through everything in the description box. As always, visit Amazon.com for Killer on a White Horse, and the Teespring page to have a look at some of the merchandise, other YouTube channels like AstroPsych 400. Lots of things going on, so that's all for me now, and I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.